All right, so we are up to week 7 now, which means uh, just this week and next week, and that'll finish out this class. Hopefully, y'all have learned a good bit, got a pretty good start on putting together web pages here. There's still a couple of classes for most of y'all. I know the client-side scripting class and the server-side scripting class. So still a lot of stuff, a lot more stuff to learn, but hopefully we've got a good start on it. Let's see, got a couple things to go over today. One of the big ones, the biggest part is talking about search engines and what we have to do to get our stuff to show up on the Google results page. So we'll look at that shortly. The other thing is with the CSS animations we looked at last Wednesday, there were still a couple more parts, some useful controls that we have, but I found the past couple times I taught it, it seemed overwhelming to do it all at once. So I split that up into two things. So I think we can kind of finish that up today. Just a couple small control issues is what it amounts to. I guess we'll start with that. I'll go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to stop the screen share and let him in. There's Blake. Okay. Hi, Blake. We're just getting started here. Going to finish up the CSS animations that we started looking at last week. So for a quick review, I'm just going to do a new page just for kind of a review thing. Set up that stuff that we've seen many times now. Our doc type declaration, then our tags to say everything between that start and end is what the computer needs to define as HTML. Then a head and a body section in there. That'll make a good start. Nothing fancy there, things we've seen many, many times. Let's put it in delete. I'll call this nm2.html. And I'm just going to put a paragraph tag on here. Just that'll be enough for this. Here are some words. Something that we can see on the page. Put that over here at the left. I don't know why I just opened the browser that way. That's not what I meant to do. I'm gonna actually open this file. There we go. So nothing too fancy. Things we've seen before. I'm just going to put the style. I'm going to do an embedded style sheet this time, just because we haven't seen very many of those this semester, and remind you that we can do that. We've been doing most of our stuff in external style sheets, which is the one we should go to. But whenever we have, usually we'll have an external sheet that applies to the whole site. But if we want to override some of those rules on a particular page, we will embed a style sheet, the HTML style tag inside of the head element. And if we want to override any of those rules, we can put the style attribute right into a tag. So we can use that for a little bit of overriding. Let's see, I'll just set up a couple simple rules here, something to make that visible. Background color for screen, color yellow. Nothing too fancy, maybe a width and a height. with 124 pixels, height 23 points. And as always, we can mix and match all this stuff. Oh, maybe bigger than that. 44 points. Just something there so we can see it moving. Like we saw last week, we have, well, start with just some sort of review on how the animations work. We use that keyword at keyframes, and then we give it some sort of name. I'll just call this entrance. We saw most of how to put this together, and hopefully you all had a little bit of time to play around with that and get a few things figured out with it. I'll just do maybe 3 of them. So 0%, 0%, it'll be somewhere at 33%. We'll set up something. 67%. We'll set up some sort of rule, and then at the end, 100% of the way through our animation, we'll have some other rule. And then we can apply any CSS properties we want here. So maybe at 0%, it is left of negative negative 45 points. Oops, wait, that's the height. Negative 125 pixels to the left, so just off the screen. And if we're going to use the left one, we do need to set the position. Position, I'll just do relative. That'll work. And maybe change the color of it. Color white. Background color blue. Sky blue. There we go. And then a third of the way through will be, I don't know, maybe right at the starting point. Keep those colors. 2/3 of the way through, maybe it'll go over a little ways. Change that to yellow, and yeah, then on the last one, somewhere near the starting point, but not right at the starting point. I'm gonna move it over just a little. Background color, lime. That'll apply to something in a moment. That's why I didn't want to quite end at the same spot it finishes at. And if we reload, oh, I forgot that most important part. Now we can say that we want that animation to happen. And to do that, we need those 2 parts, animation name, called that entrance, and an animation duration, let's say 5 seconds. Oh, there's Bree. I'm gonna stop the screen share and let her in. Hi, Bree. We were just getting started, finishing up the CSS animations. So all you missed so far is the review stuff. The same thing we did last week. So getting set up. So we can have that come in, move around, change colors, go back and forth. And then after the animation's finished, it jumps to that final position. Kind of what we saw last week. And we have more control over it. There's some other things we can take control over. First off, is maybe how many times does that happen? Right? By default, it happens once. So it's sort of an entrance to the page. But maybe we want that to happen a few times. And that is the long one. Animation iteration count. And I'll set this to happen 3 times because I want to watch something here. Oh, whoops. I'm turning the word wrap off. Guess I can make this a little wider. Like that. So it's set to happen 3 times. Oh yeah, I guess Bree, you were joining us a little bit late. I did an embedded style sheet this time just because we haven't done those very many times in class. Just as a reminder, we can do that. So it comes in, there's sort of once through the animation. It's 2 times. So here's the 3rd time. Should be over now. Yeah, so it does it 3 times. And you have to watch that because sometimes when we say in programming, when we go to repeat things, that is more times. So it doesn't count the first time. But as we saw there, just from counting it, I can speed that up, make it 2 seconds long. We got 1, 2, 3 times, and then it's finished. So it is the actual number of times that it runs. And that goes back and forth whenever we repeat animations in different types of programming. So you might forget that sometimes. So it doesn't hurt to just check it. You know, put in 2 or 3 in there and then count how many times it happens. If you start working with other languages and can't remember if it's the total count or the more times. So that's the first one. It's just, first thing is, how many times does it play? And it's spelled out, so it's a really long name, the iteration count. Let's see, I'll just comment that out. The next thing we could control is, well, we saw here, it comes from the left, moves over into the green, and then finishes up. So we could also change the direction it goes. And at this point, you could probably guess the name for this one. Just the animation direction. I guess right off the bat, might as well. The normal one, the one that goes in the order we typed, normal is the order we typed it in here. So I'll slow that back down. I just sped it up to count it. So it comes in, moves over, changes colors, moves back, changes colors again, then jumps to the end. Instead of normal, we could also play it in reverse. Where it starts at that ending position, then moves over and then back off the screen, and then so just completely backwards. Or the one that is, if you're going to change direction, the one you're probably going to use most often is alternate. And that goes both ways. It'll go forward and then backwards. So the animation plays and then unplays itself, basically. So you can see it comes over, moves to the right, then back to the final position. Why didn't that alternate? It should have went backwards again. Did I spell something wrong? Oh, wait. I think I've turned this back on. Yeah. So notice the animation iteration count's important. Then went forward, then backwards, then forward again. Let me increase that to like, I don't know, 6. A nice even number. So it should play both ways 3 times now. So it comes in, does like the way it's written, and now it goes the other way to back off, then comes in again for a second time, and it alternates back and forth. And it's important to note that if you're going to alternate it, you do have to remember the animation iteration count. And yeah, so it runs forward and backward 3 times. And opposed to that is we have alternate reverse, which you can probably guess immediately what happens on that one. It just does the reverse animation, and then it's just going to keep going back and forth on it. So those two are really useful for subtle animations. That might be good for your bike thing, Joe. You can have your bike come on move across the screen and then back off.
We'll give that a shot.
Yeah, it's something to play around with. But yeah, most of the time that you change the direction, it's probably going to be alternate, and just remember that you have to do several iterations because you can't go backwards and forwards if you only do it once. You have to do it at least twice to go backwards and forwards. And the last thing that we can take a lot of control over is the speed at which it plays. So I'm going to comment out those last 2 lines there. I'll make sure that's back to the beginning, just back to the default one. You see it kind of went slow, then it seemed to speed up a little and eases off there at the end. There's a few ways that we have control over that. That default one, well, our property that we're going to set is animation timing function. So we have to use a pre-built function for these. That default one is just ease. So it starts slow, then kind of goes fast in the middle, and then slows down at the end so that it smooths in and out. If we want it to go constant, we can set it to linear. And well, this big jumpy thing might not be the best example, but at least there at the end, you can see it doesn't necessarily slow down. It's just moving constantly at a steady rate. If you want the steady rate the whole time, then it's linear. And we can control that, like we saw, if we put ease, which is the default one, it's slow at the beginning and end and faster in the middle. And we can change that to specify just the beginning or just the end. So it starts slow, then it speeds up and ends at the normal speed. So we could either ease in or ease out, which kind of starts as like it's going to be a linear speed, moving constant, and then slows down at the end. And the other type is a cubic Bezier curve. I have this, I'm going to do a visual representation of what a cubic Bezier curve is, because it's not necessarily a completely smooth curve. So I have this SVG graphics pulled up. We might look at this, might look at SVG graphics today. That's probably going to be next. We'll do that another before long. But if I start like kind of making some points to try and put a straight line, notice it starts to form a curve. But when I put the next point in, it affects the curve that's already there. That's how more points keep changing that curve. So that's what Bezier curves do. We'll probably look at this soon. Is there a place where I can just, I can't remember where to pull up the code, but that is what I was just doing there is SVG graphics would work right in web pages. It's doing the graphics with with tags similar to like HTML, a markup language. But it's a way to produce a smooth curve, but it's kind of an intricate math formula. So we do have those interactions. The next point will produce the previous point. But for the basic idea of it, we put in cubic Bezier, and then we start putting in numbers. So like 3, 7, 2, 8. I'll start with something like this. I guess I'll just play this and then we'll talk about what it does. Notice the speed kind of kept changing there, right? It wasn't at all like if I comment this out, go back to just the default one. Oops. There's some jumps just because I was just making that up off the top of my head and didn't really prepare very well for the Bezier one, but it's fairly smooth. And this type of curve, it's curving the time. I pulled up that visual representation so you can see that it's a smooth curve that smooths itself out the further you go. But we end up with these big jumps and fast spots and slow spots. And it's kind of like these numbers add up to the fraction of that animation that will pass in an equal amount of time. So what's that add up to there? 10, so 20. So we split our 5 seconds up into 20 equal time intervals. And then each one of these, so like 3/20ths pass in the same amount of time as the next 7/20ths. And then 2/20ths will pass, and then 8/20ths of the animation will pass there at the end. Does that make sense? I get some yeses or nos, because it is a little odd. But whatever the amount these numbers add up to, we're going to split it into equal parts. So like in this case, it adds up to 20. So there's 20 equal parts. I could probably accentuate this even more, make those a 1 and a 1. What is that now? So now there's like 17 equal parts. And the first we'll do 1/17 of it in the same amount of time that we follow up with 7/17 of it. And then again, 1/17 of it. And then in the same amount, the same time interval, which is 17th of 5 seconds in this particular case, we'll cover 8/17 of the animation. It did something weird there. That might have been too extreme, but you see how it jumps around? It's definitely jumping around a lot more. And it stretches it out into like curves. So like 3, 17, 11, 2. Let's see what this does. That looks an awful lot like the first one. But that's something to play around with, and just think of it as, so take all those numbers, add all those together, and that's how many intervals, time intervals you're splitting your duration up into. And then it's just that fraction of the interval, which you saw when I put in stuck a couple ones in there. Sometimes it will act a bit unpredictably. And that's, so you want to watch those carefully. It's like this curve thing. whenever we put the next point in there, it affects the curve that's already present. And each next point changes the curve that was already there. So Bezier curves take a little bit of practice to get used to. Why don't I do this real quick? Let's just take this into the delete folder to kind of, since I talked about it, we're going to look at this in detail at some point soon, just seeing what these look like. But if I save that file, well, here on my computer, it would open with that. If I right click on it and open it with the text editor, you see that drawing I just did is SVG. You'll notice the tags. So we have the angle brackets indicating the tag, then a whole bunch of attributes. Yeah, it looks a lot smoother. Okay, yeah, then there's this path tag that gives us all these different points that add up to that curve. We'll take a look at that in a simpler example than a Bezier curve. Those are kind of complicated math formulas, but we'll see that before too long. Yeah, the main point there is you want to play around with that one. A lot of times, again, the default is just ease, which is slow at the beginning and the end and fast in the middle. But if you want to switch it to just the beginning or just the end, you can do ease in or ease out. Those are probably a little more common. Or in a lot of cases, you're going to want to switch that to just linear. That way it's just a steady rate the whole time. Everything just moves at a nice steady pace. And it gives us a whole lot more control over the animations. And the last thing, I kind of left a point in here that you definitely notice. Let's see, I'm going to take out that timing function as well. I'll just comment it out and go back to the defaults. So I kind of left this point in here. You probably notice that blue and white, and yellow and blue, and lime and green, then suddenly it jumps when it gets to the end. So we have this other one. The last main property you're probably going to want to play around with to get used to get started working with these is animation fill mode, and that kind of fills outward from the animation. So the default is none. It doesn't fill at all. Let me put a delay here too. We saw that the other day. We can wait for say 1 second before we start running our animation. And I'll just start with put in the default value of none. So it's going to wait 1 second, or the page will load. It's going to wait 1 second, then run through the animation. But we'll see a couple jumps because it starts in that finished position, then does all the color changing, sliding, and then jumps back to that normal position. So we can change that by extending the first and last frame out. So like this 0% one where the animation starts, we can extend that out back to however far. Or the last frame where it ends, we can extend that one out and make that the new final style rule. Which the words for that are just forwards and backwards. So if we say forwards, you can see it just continues going forward. So forward is our last frame, continues afterwards. If we put in backwards, You see the first frame of the animation extended back to when we reloaded the page. So whenever you put in a delay, you might want to do something like that. Or we could say both. So forwards, backwards, and both are basically the options. So forwards keeps going. Backwards goes back to when the page was loaded. Yeah, so think about like these percents. So forwards keeps going. We hit 100%, and then we keep these style rules going forward in time. Backwards is the other way. So take our first set of style rules and extend those all the way back in time to where the page was loaded. So if you have things like a delay, it can be useful to throw that in to blend into your animation. Or to avoid jumps. We'll put in forwards. Then we have that default rule, and then at some point later, we went through all that animation. Or backwards, and then we don't have that jump where we start in the style rules. It just starts ready to come onto the page, and then finally ends in that spot. And for one more comparison, I'll comment that out so you can remind you what it was like when we started. So it starts with the default rules, goes through the jumps to the animation, goes through the rest, and then jumps back. So that animation fill mode can be very useful for blending the animations into the page. So there's not a sudden jump at the beginning or end of it. Does anybody have any questions about those? That was the other control features I had, but I've found over the past couple semesters, whenever I'd include that in the initial lecture, it ended up being an overwhelming thing. So hopefully you had a little bit of time to practice with the basic idea of it. And then that'll be an extension on it, ways to get control. How many times does it happen? Which direction does it go, forwards or backwards, or alternate between them? And changing the timing. The ease and linear are fairly straightforward, but the cubic Bezier one, you're going to want to play around with that. That's why I pulled up the visual representation. A cubic Bezier curve is not exactly straightforward, because as I put in more points, it affects the curve that was already there. And that makes a big, you can see that in the visual representation. Every time we add another point to it, it affects what was already there. So it does take a little bit of messing around with to get used to that one. But it should help to make your animations look a whole lot better and smooth out the beginnings and ends and give you a little control over the time for them. Any questions about that? It's fairly straightforward, and yeah, as usual, it's definitely something to kind of play around with. What's that? 135. Okay. Let's see. And the next thing on the list, there's kind of two parts to. And I've been going back and forth all morning about deciding which two parts to which one to start with. So the next thing is search engine optimization, SEO. I guess I could start writing that on the board. Yeah, we'll look at the Google first, I guess. So search engine optimization. hopefully everybody almost immediately sees the importance in this, right? How do we find out things on the internet? We go right to the search engine and look for it. Sometimes even sites that we know. I know over the years I've seen quite a few people that are in their second or, well into their second year at Ivy Tech, the third or fourth semester, that to get to the Ivy Learn and My Ivy, they still just go to Google and search for Ivy Tech. They don't bother typing the address at all. Some people never go to the address bar. So we need a search engine to tell people where our site is. And, well, optimization, we can do things that will encourage the search engine to suggest our site to people, increase our rankings. That's the big list. I guess I'll start with the other part though. First off, the site, the search engine has to know about our site. So to do that, we have to kind of tell it about our site. So I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen, and we'll go over the steps for this real quick. We'll close this, and with that one for now. I'll close this. And I'm just going to use the site for this class for the example on how to do this. So I need to upload a couple things real quick. I don't think there's actually anything on that page. Oh, yeah. It's first of the month, so I cleared out the history on the internet again. I forgot all of my pages. Hopefully it still remembers all my passwords though. And yeah, like I just did where I went in and typed in the address. Most people don't do that, right? We go to a search engine and look for it. And then Google tells us where it's at. And we probably never even look. Sure, whatever. We probably never even look at the actual address. Or a lot of people don't. Like I was saying, I've seen a number of people that 3 or 4 semesters at Ivy Tech, and they still just go to Google and type in search for Ivy Tech instead of ever typing in their email address and stuff. So what do I have on this page? I don't think there's much. There's a couple things. I'll upload some more files just to have more stuff there. Upload file. I couldn't remember what was there, so I just wanted to make sure there was more than an index page. That'll work. Upload all those. I think I still have the default index, and there's no table of contents, so we don't really need to look at that. But hopefully you all see there's a bunch of HTML and CSS files there now. So there's a few things to the page. That'll be kind of important. Well, I guess I do need to pull it up. And the browser doesn't remember anything. So what was this site? Testupload.apz.com. So we end up with the default one, or /anim2.html. I think it's the one we just did. Yeah, that animation we just did. A few different sites there. A few different things on this. So the first thing we have to do is Google's not going to know where to look for that until we tell it to, right? If I search for test upload, there's Well, definitely nothing here at the top about it, right? And I could go through a few things. It's not going to be on there because Google doesn't know about this page yet. So there's a couple things we need. The first thing we need in order for for Google to set up these results, it's not a person that does it. So it's all done with bots. So we have to get it set up so that a bot can navigate around our page and find its way around our page. And to do that, we need a sitemap, which the quickest way is just we can put that in Google, generate a sitemap. The one I usually use is xml-sitemaps.com, right at the top. So or you can type in that address. And now we can just enter the URL for our website. So I'll just copy that from here, paste that in here, and it should generate a free sitemap for us. Nope, I think well, this is probably good. I'll go to preview this. And let's see, downloads. That's weird. I wonder why it wants to open with that. If I open this up, notice all it found was the index page. So there's bots going out and they went to that index page, but then they couldn't get anywhere else. So maybe I should set up a quick table of contents for what's here. I'm going to delete this index. And I'll just make another quick one that goes to a couple things: anim, anim2, calc, and file. So things we've seen before, I probably should have anticipated that this needed done and set all this up, but the bots that went out and tried to map up the site couldn't find anything else there. /head, body, oops. Let's see, what can I do here? I'll just put them in a list. href equals calc.html. That's good. So it gives something on that page. Oh, pictures are in the way. Save that. Close that. And if I click here, okay, so yeah, so now we can at least get to those other pages. That looks like the stuff from last week. It didn't get deleted yet. And then the one from this morning. It's not much, but hopefully it's enough for the example. So now if I'll go in here and paste that again. Oh. So copy the address and paste that in here. I don't think it did. I don't think it rescanned it. Maybe it did. Nope, I don't think it rescanned it. Sorry, let me try this again. Delete those. If it doesn't want to rescan it, I will do something different. Or I'll just paste that in because we're just kind of looking at the steps here. Paste that in and then go scan it. It's still looking at the old page. Well, maybe I'll try this. I might try another one. Generate sitemap. Free sitemap generator. So I haven't used this one before, but that one remembers it already scanned that page, so it's still scanning the old, using the old version. And hopefully it's not going to take too long here. Okay, there we go. Paste that in. And just hit generate sitemap, and it should create an XML file for you. You just send some bots out. They go look at the page, follow all the links around to get all the pages that are there. And I don't see any sort of download thing. Oh, there it is. Well, that one looks like it only went to one page too. So I'm just going to go with it. But it'll generate, it should go through and find all of your pages. It should follow links and things like that. I don't know why it didn't follow the links to get the other pages. But you'll end up with an XML file, looks something like this. We've been looking at a different markup language, but that should look somewhat familiar. We have all our tags there with data in between them, things like that. And once you have your sitemap, then over where the site is being hosted at, you'll want to upload the sitemap. So the same way you upload the other files, just hit upload and bring in something called sitemap.xml, because the bots that go and scan sites need that file, which they're not bad to type out and modify, but it's a whole lot easier just to have it generated. Once you have a sitemap on there, then we can tell Google about it. So you'll go to this site, developers, www.google.com. And if you're going to do a lot of web-based stuff, I think most people in this class have mentioned planning on doing that, or Android stuff, you will spend a lot of time on this site. Here on the homepage for it, developers.google.com. This is the back-end stuff for Google, all the stuff we have to work with. Under products, if you're going to do any of this stuff, any Android or Firebase, Google Assistant or Maps stuff, or web stuff, you're going to spend a lot of time here. Over under Grow, so like you don't want to actually click products, the little arrow beside products. Under Grow, there's an option for search. And this is kind of new. They just added this year, but it's really nice. So Google themselves have started releasing lessons on search engine optimization. So they will tell you how to improve your site there on their stuff. So there's a lot of a whole bunch of lessons you can look through. It goes automatically to it, or well, over here behind these pictures again, there's this button. After you get through all the lessons, you can just go to the Search Console. And once you're on here, there's a whole lot of things here. You can just upload your sitemap. So this went to my wrong account. You can upload the sitemap here, or you should be able to type in that address. Is that still up there? Yeah, it went to my wrong account. Why is this? I change that here. Okay, so I'm gonna go to new domain. This domain. Yeah, so kind of set up the domain you want to search for. I thought I had all this set up already. Oh. Go to this one. There we go. And then they will give you this file. They're just, it's a computer file. This is specifically for the bots. It's like a tracking thing. When this is on the internet, after one of the algorithms finishes going through its code, looking at the page, it just looks for this someplace that has this file on it. So you just download this file and then upload that to your site. So that stretched out a little ways. Generate a sitemap after you put your site together. You'll generate a sitemap, or you could type that up. It's a lot easier just to generate them, and then go to that Google thing and get the file from them and upload that to your site. And once that's there, just hit verify. And now, within 72 hours, Google's bots will go out and scan the site, and then it will start showing up in search results. That site right there, probably not going to rank very highly. So, I know it kind of drifted off there for a second. So let me go over that again. So from your site, once it's all set together, get a sitemap, because the bots will need that. And basically that is an XML file listing that has links to every page on the site. For some reason, the generator couldn't find anything but the index here, but yeah, if your site is finished beforehand, it should find it with no trouble. Then once you have a sitemap on there, go to search.google.com to get right into it, or that roundabout way that I showed you, because you're going to want to know that website at some point. Developers.google.com. Just go in there, and the drop down arrow by products, eventually, there's a whole lot of things. You can go to search, and there's a bunch of lessons that Google has put together to teach you how to improve your search results. But eventually, a couple clicks later, you'll see this button, go to Search Console, and that's the one that goes over to that other page, the search.google.com. And then from here, you'll just paste in a website that you want it to go look at, and they will generate a file for you and upload the file that Google generates to your website. And then the bots can find it to start adding to, so that it'll show up on search results. Though right off the bat, it's probably not going to rank very high in the search results. That's the other set of notes I had in front of me. Sorry about that, kind of going in circles for a moment there. That's why I just repeated everything. Hopefully those steps make sense. It's fairly straightforward, and if you're doing a lot of things on the web or with Android or any of Google stuff, you're going to quite often go to that page or that website, developers.google.com. So it's a good one to keep in mind. But there are things, the search engine optimization, we want to improve our search results, because right off the bat, it's not going to rank very highly unless we do some things to increase the ranking. So it looks like it's 2 o'clock, and the lectures are kind of getting shorter. I guess we started that last week. So that way there's plenty of time to work on your projects and get all of this stuff together. Because something like this, search engine optimization, is something you're going to want to include just to start getting some practice with it. Are things to keep in mind while you're putting your site together. So you might want to include some of the things we're getting ready to look at. But why don't we take a break first? That was about an hour of class. Does that sound good to everybody? Take a 10-minute break, and then we'll talk about improving our search results. Okay, so let's take 10 minutes. We'll meet back here at 2:10 and then go over the next section.